Russian special forces have reportedly landed in Burkina Faso, but not for war. Their mission? To protect President Ibrahim Traoré, who just survived a deadly assassination plot. But why is Russia stepping into this high-stakes drama? What threat do they see in common? As Traoré faces growing danger from enemies both foreign and domestic, Burkina Faso stands on the edge of a political eruption. Let's unpack the story behind this explosive alliance. The recent defeat of a significant coup attempt highlights how precarious the situation is. Traoré has responded by taking a dramatic step, deploying Russian special forces to defend his regime and important government officials. This surprising action calls into question Burkina Faso's evolving geopolitical ties and the extent Traoré will go to protect himself from outside threats. There have been several attacks on Traoré's administration. The young leader has been dealing with a constant barrage of internal and external pressure since assuming office in September 2022. An already unstable security situation has been made worse by the country's transformation into a battlefield for insurgent groups, many of which operate in the Sahel region with considerable impunity. These organizations have targeted Burkina Faso's government in an attempt to take advantage of the political unrest there in an effort to increase their influence throughout West Africa. The recent coup attempt was the latest in a series of attempts by local factions within the military and political elite to topple Traoré's government. Traoré's power was especially threatened by the failed coup in April 2025. According to reports, the presidential palace was to be stormed by a well-planned operation including insurgency organizations and both current and retired military members. This coup was a part of a larger plan to overthrow the administration Traoré had laboriously constructed, and it was not just about taking power. The plot's specifics exposed a network of conspirators, some of whom were closely associated with foreign entities vying for control of Burkina Faso's vital resources. Although the plot's revelation was shocking, it was only one of several unsuccessful attempts to depose Traoré. The Burkinabe government has to act decisively in response to these persistent threats. Traoré understood the gravity of the situation and that protecting his leadership from both internal and external threats was essential to his survival and consequently to the stability of Burkina Faso. He didn't make the choice to send in Russian commandos lightly, but it shows how serious the situation was and how quickly he needed to act. Protecting Traoré and ensuring the survival of his government was the main goal of the deployment of these commandos, who were prepared and trained to manage high-stakes security missions. An important shift in Burkina Faso's security environment is the Russian military's deployment there. These special forces are not only present for ceremonial protection, they play a significant role in protecting important government officials, bolstering vital infrastructure, and supplying local forces with military knowledge. Protecting Traoré and other senior people in his government is the task assigned to the Russian commandos. Their presence is intended to deter future assassination attempts on the president and guarantee that any military or political resistance is met with prompt action. The training of Burkina Faso's armed forces is one of the main functions of Russian forces. In order to combat the increasing threat of rebels and internal conspirators, the Russian commandos are teaching sophisticated tactical knowledge, counterintelligence methods, and surveillance tactics. The Russian commandos are assisting in the development of a more robust security apparatus that can endure upcoming difficulties by collaborating closely with the Burkina Faso military. In addition to improving the local forces' skills, this training has represented the strengthening of Burkina Faso's relationship with Russia. A change in Burkina Faso's foreign policy is also indicated by the arrival of Russian troops. Traoré's choice to side with Russia, a country that is becoming more and more powerful in Africa, is a significant shift from the nation's long-standing reliance on Western assistance, especially from France. French military had been stationed in Burkina Faso to fight insurgencies for years, and the country had been involved in French-led counterinsurgency operations in the Sahel. But in recent years, the relationship between France and Burkina Faso has deteriorated, with Traoré's administration increasingly seeing French influence as a liability rather than an asset. Burkina Faso's move toward Russia was largely influenced by the French retreat from the area, especially in Mali, and the growing discontent with Western meddling in African issues. However, Russia has been more than happy to intervene and provide assistance. Russia has positioned itself as a partner to African regimes seeking independence from Western influence, in contrast to Western countries that frequently place restrictions on military aid. Russia's engagement in Burkina Faso aims to establish a long-term strategic alliance in addition to safeguarding Traoré. Russia is establishing itself as a major force in the future of the Sahel by securing its presence there, especially as African countries seek for security options free from political constraints and diversify their relationships. The Russian Special Forces' participation also speaks to the shifting Sahelian dynamics. Russia's strength is increasing while Western nations continue to retreat from the area. Moscow has been expanding its presence in Africa by providing different regimes who are hesitant to accept Western intervention with military assistance, equipment, and training. Russia is aware of the strategic importance of Burkina Faso, which is situated in the center of the Sahel. By supporting Traoré, Russia is strengthening its position in Burkina Faso and extending its power throughout the region, positioning itself as a crucial ally in the fight against insurgents and interventions supported by the West. Although the deployment of Russian commandos is an important step in ensuring Traoré's leadership, it is unclear what the wider ramifications will be for Burkina Faso's future. Whether the Russian assistance can help stabilize the regime will be determined in the upcoming months as the nation continues to be caught in a vicious cycle of political instability and insurgency. But one thing is certain: Russian military intervention ushers in a new era in Burkina Faso's history, one in which the nation is redefining its position in the world's geopolitical landscape and ensuring its own security. The question now is if Russia is actually concerned about Traoré's safety. Why so? Add your voice to the total liberation of Africa by leaving a comment in the comments section below. Do not forget to like and subscribe for more informative videos like this one. Let's proceed. Burkina Faso's move toward Russia is more than just a tactical one motivated by need. It also reflects a larger geopolitical story in which Burkina Faso is working to counter Western powers' influence, especially that of former colonial powers like France. Although the choice to side with Russia may appear unexpected at first, it becomes more apparent when one takes into account the two countries' mutual interests, particularly in relation to the threat of Western exploitation and meddling. The belief that the West is an unreliable ally, especially in light of Burkina Faso's internal conflicts, is one of the main causes of the country's expanding relations with Russia. The nation has had numerous coup attempts since the ascent of Captain Ibrahim Traoré in 2022, many of which have been ascribed to outside interference and resistance within the military supported by the West. Burkina Faso has long experienced political unrest due to the West, especially France, whose military presence in the country has sometimes been regarded with distrust. Numerous Burkinabés believe that France has long used its influence to exert neo-imperial control over African countries, disregarding the continent's sovereignty and right to self-determination. Another reason for the change is the West's inability to provide Burkina Faso with effective assistance in its fight against insurgencies. The growth of insurgent violence in the Sahel has not been stopped over time by Western-backed counter-insurgency operations spearheaded by French forces under Operation Barkhane. The French military presence, which many see as a foreign occupation rather than a sincere attempt to defend the area, has frequently encountered local resistance rather than delivering stability. Russia's strategy, on the other hand, has been viewed as more practical since it provides military assistance free of political restrictions. Leaders like Traore, who saw Russia as a partner in their fight for autonomy and sovereignty, are moved by Russia's readiness to interact with African nations on an equal basis rather than enforcing its own political agenda. Furthermore, Western nations, who frequently meddle in African politics under the pretense of advancing democracy, human rights, and stability, are a shared enemy of both Russia and Burkina Faso. To many African leaders, this language often covers an objective of control, extraction of resources, and meddling in domestic affairs. Russia, meantime, has constantly positioned itself as a counterpoint to the West's domination, offering an alternative vision of global politics where Africa's sovereignty is recognized. In addition to obtaining military support, Burkina Faso is making a clear statement to the West that African countries would no longer submit to colonial powers' dictates by siding with Russia. Another significant aspect in Burkina Faso's turn toward Russia is the economic and strategic potential Russia presents. Russia has been making more and more investments in infrastructure development, natural resource extraction, and military training in Africa. Due to Burkina Faso's abundance of resources, especially gold, Russia's engagement might have a major positive economic impact and guarantee that the country's riches is used to fortify the country rather than enrich other powers. Russia has positioned itself as an alternative to Western economic exploitation and has long had an interest in Africa, especially in nations with abundant natural resources. Through this new cooperation, Burkina Faso might lessen its dependency on Western financial help, while simultaneously gaining access to investments in vital industries like mining, energy, and infrastructure. Identity issues and the desire to escape colonialism's legacy are also present. Russia's historical opposition to Western imperialism throughout the Cold War has solidified its reputation as a world power that is sympathetic to the plight of post-colonial nations in the eyes of many African nations. Russia portrays itself as a partner that respects the sovereignty of African states and is prepared to provide support without the hidden costs frequently associated with Western aid, despite the fact that it has a history of problematic overseas interventions of its own. Countries like Burkina Faso, which have long grappled with the weight of colonial legacies and the ongoing influence of former colonial powers in their internal affairs, find great resonance in this viewpoint. But it's crucial to remember that this alliance with Russia encompasses more than just opposition to the West. It concerns the practicalities of surviving in a highly unstable area. Like many other Sahelian nations, Burkina Faso has had little assistance from its long-standing Western friends and has been forced to contend with the prospect of insurgencies. The decision to accept Russia is, in many respects, a reflection of the urgent need for outside military support to secure the regime and the nation overall, as the nation is currently experiencing a security crisis. Traore and his government view this as a lifeline in times of crisis, and Russia is an attractive alternative because of its readiness to offer this support without the political conditions frequently imposed by Western nations. Furthermore, the growing Russian influence in Burkina Faso portends a more significant change in the Sahelian geopolitics. Russia is filling the void left by Western nations, especially France, leaving the area due to local resistance and growing anti-colonial sentiment. For other countries in the region, particularly those aiming to disassociate themselves from Western meddling, Burkina Faso's alliance with Russia might serve as a model. As nations increasingly look to China and Russia for assistance, this tendency may lead to a more extensive realignment in Africa, tipping the scales in favor of non-Western nations. The political and security situation in Burkina Faso is still unstable, and Captain Ibrahim Traoré's regime's future is in jeopardy. Traoré has an uphill battle to keep control of the nation, even though he has successfully thwarted several coup attempts, including the most recent one, and has received military help from Russia to sustain his leadership. His government's stability is constantly under jeopardy due to the intricate web of insurgencies, internal strife, and international monitoring. It remains to be seen if Traoré can build on his achievements, or if the difficulties that lie ahead will overshadow his attempts to ensure Burkina Faso's future. The continuous threat posed by Sahelian insurgent groups is among Traoré's most important problems. Attacks on government, military, and civilian targets have increased dramatically in the nation, displacing more than 1 million people. The security situation is still grave despite Traoré's efforts to battle these insurgencies, which have emerged as a major issue for his government. In response to these threats, Russian soldiers, notably the highly skilled Commandos ordered to guard Traoré, have been deployed. It is yet unknown, though, how successful this foreign military involvement will be. Traoré and other important government officials have undoubtedly been immediately protected by Russian forces, but the nation's long-term stability depends on more than just outside military assistance. In the areas most impacted by militant violence, Traoré's administration needs to address the underlying reasons of the insurgencies, such as a lack of infrastructure, economic opportunity, and efficient governance. Furthermore, one of Traoré's biggest challenges is the difficulty of bringing the nation together. Since assuming office, his government has encountered strong opposition from a range of social groupings, including civil society organizations, military factions, and political elites. Burkina Faso's economic woes, especially the growing cost of living and the disruption of essential services brought on by the conflict, have made these divisions worse. Although some sections of the populace, particularly those who were turned off by the previous government's connections to France and the West, have supported Traoré, his administration has had difficulty winning over the general public. The history of military takeovers in Burkina Faso exacerbates the country's internal political division. The military has been essential in determining political power, and the nation has seen repeated changes of leadership. This has led to a culture of political instability in which different factions within the military try to discredit one another, and loyalty to the state is frequently questioned. These conflicts are starkly brought to light by the recent failed coup attempt. Traoré's attempts to bolster his authority have not eliminated the possibility of additional military resistance. Although it is challenging to resolve the divides within the military, Traoré's armed personnel, especially the Presidential Guard, must remain loyal. Beyond the political and security issues, Traoré's administration is deeply concerned about Burkina Faso's economic state. Because of the growing violence and the interruption of important industries like mining and agriculture, the nation's economic progress has stalled. Accusations of corruption and poor management have undermined the country's gold resources, which have grown to be a vital component of its economy, and are at the center of international disputes. While making sure that these resources are not exploited by outside parties, Traoré's administration must figure out how to use them to support long-term economic growth and development. However, Burkina Faso may also benefit economically from Russia's engagement, particularly in the mining industry. Russia has demonstrated a keen interest in the resources of Africa, and its expanding footprint in the region may attract funding and assistance for important infrastructure initiatives. To achieve this, though, Traoré's administration would have to carefully balance retaining control over its own resources with reaping the benefits of Russian assistance. Burkina Faso's natural wealth has historically been exploited by foreign powers, and Traoré needs to make sure that this doesn't open up a new channel for outside influence on the nation's economy. Traoré's support for Russia is not risk-free on the global scene. Although Russia has supplied military assistance and a substitute for missions supported by the West, this change could have serious geopolitical repercussions. Burkina Faso's increasing connections with Moscow have alarmed Western nations, especially France, who have accused Traoré of siding with a country that has its own interests in Africa. Burkina Faso's move away from France may further isolate the nation as Western nations reevaluate their involvement in the area, especially in light of growing Chinese and Russian influence. Given that the nation still needs international aid and development support, to stabilize its economy, Traoré must carefully manage these issues to avoid more diplomatic repercussions from the West as a result of his alliance with Russia. Traoré has the chance to create a more resilient Burkina Faso in spite of the growing obstacles. His administration needs to concentrate on governance reforms that enhance the quality of life for average Burkinabés and deal with the root causes of unhappiness. This entails resolving the nation's long-standing human rights issues, enhancing infrastructure, and generating jobs. The future stability of Burkina Faso will depend on maintaining its sovereignty while interacting with outside forces. Do you believe Traoré can survive and save Burkina Faso with his fixes? Is there any problem with all the good accomplishments he has achieved already? Do you think Traoré can be defeated? Tell us what you think in the comments section below. We explore the rich history, culture, and the ongoing struggle for sovereignty in Africa. Join us in this important conversation by subscribing to our channel. By subscribing, you're not just staying informed, you're becoming part of a movement dedicated to reclaiming Africa's rightful place on the global stage. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Let's work together to spread knowledge and inspire change. Thanks for watching.